The glass doors of the towering corporate building slid open, revealing a world that seemed far removed from the dirt roads and wheat fields she had left behind. Emma, the daughter of a humble farmer, walked in with her head held high, though her worn shoes and modest dress stood out in a sea of polished suits. She clutched a thin folder in her hands, the only resume she could afford to print, and whispered to herself, "Just breathe. You've faced storms tougher than this." Inside the interview room, the atmosphere was colder than the steel walls surrounding it. At the far end sat Mr. Harlan, the CEO, a man known for his arrogance as much as his success. His tailored suit gleamed under the lights, his gold watch catching every glint, as though it was meant to remind others of his worth. He leaned back in his leather chair, arms crossed, a faint smirk tugging at his lips. When Emma entered, his eyes scanned her from head to toe, dismissing her before she even spoke. "You must be Emma," he said, his tone sharp, dripping with condescension. "Interesting choice to even apply here." Emma swallowed hard but refused to shrink. She placed her folder gently on the table, meeting his gaze with quiet determination. The board members seated nearby exchanged glances, some curious, some skeptical. To them, she was just a farmer's daughter, out of her depth in a world ruled by numbers and power. But Emma knew something they didn't. She had weathered droughts, balanced debts, and carried responsibilities far heavier than any corporate title could hold. And though the CEO couldn't see it yet, the room was about to discover that beneath her humble appearance lay a strength that could outshine his arrogance. The silence in the room felt heavy, broken only by the ticking of a sleek clock on the wall. Mr. Harlan leaned forward, his smirk widening. He clearly enjoyed the imbalance of power, treating the interview as a game he had already won. "Let's see if you're even close to qualified," he said, tapping his pen against the table. "Suppose our supply chain collapsed overnight, what would you do?" His tone suggested he expected her to stumble, maybe even give up. Emma took a steady breath. Her mind traveled back to the farm, to the long summer when their irrigation pump broke during harvest season. Calmly, she replied, "On the farm, when our water system failed, we couldn't wait for someone else to fix it. We rerouted pipes, borrowed tools, and worked through the night. We didn't have resources, we had responsibility. The same applies here. Find immediate alternatives, keep the system moving, and mobilize the team before panic sets in." The board members raised their eyebrows. Her answer wasn't textbook, it was lived experience. Unimpressed, Harlan threw another question: "What about leadership under pressure? Business isn't about fixing pipes." Emma smiled faintly. "Leadership is the same anywhere. During harvest, storms roll in fast. Workers get tired, mistakes happen. A good leader doesn't just shout orders, they stand beside their team, shoulder the load, and keep spirits high until the job is done. People don't follow authority, they follow trust." The room shifted. Some of the executives leaned forward, scribbling notes. What began as mockery was turning into fascination. But the CEO's pride bristled. He wasn't ready to admit it, not yet. He decided to press harder, not realizing that every challenge only revealed more of her quiet strength. Mr. Harlan's jaw tightened. He had thrown difficult, technical questions at Emma, and somehow, she had turned each one into a lesson rooted in life, not textbooks. He leaned back in his chair, his smirk returning, but this time tinged with irritation. "All right then," he said sharply, his voice echoing across the polished room. "Tell me, what makes you think a farmer's daughter, someone with dirt under her nails, could ever sit at this table and make decisions worth millions? What do you really know about leadership, sacrifice, or responsibility?" The question hung in the air, harsh and cutting. A few board members shifted uncomfortably, waiting for Emma to break under the weight of his words. But instead, she grew quiet. Her gaze dropped for a moment, as if replaying memories she had kept close to her heart. When she looked up, her eyes glistened, not with fear, but with conviction. You ask what I know about responsibility, she began softly. When I was 16, a drought hit our town. Families couldn't afford food, and many came to us, hungry and desperate. My father had a choice: sell what little we had and keep us comfortable, or share it and risk losing everything. We gave it away, bushels of grain, sacks of potatoes, until our own pantry was bare. I watched him choose others over himself, and I carried those lessons into every part of my life. The room fell silent. Emma's voice trembled, but it carried strength. Leadership isn't about sitting in a chair with a title. It's about standing up when others are falling, and giving when it costs you the most. For the first time, the CEO had no quick remark. Her words struck deeper than strategy, they cut straight to the soul. The room felt different now, still, heavy, charged with something deeper than business. Emma's words lingered in the air, settling into the hearts of everyone present. Even the board members, who had entered the meeting ready to judge her, sat in thoughtful silence, their pens resting uselessly on notepads. Mr. Harlan, the man who prided himself on being untouchable, found himself staring at her, unable to hide the flicker of emotion crossing his face. For years, he had built his empire on ruthless efficiency, measuring success in profit margins and quarterly reports. But her story unearthed something he had long buried. A memory of his own childhood, when his struggling mother had once accepted free food from a kind neighbor who asked for nothing in return. He shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his arrogance faltering. For the first time in decades, he felt small, not because of her simplicity, but because of her strength. Emma sat calmly, her hands folded in her lap, not realizing how deeply she had unsettled him. She wasn't trying to win the room with cleverness. She was simply telling the truth of her life, a truth sharper than any business theory. Finally, one board member broke the silence. That is leadership, he whispered, almost to himself. Another nodded, scribbling furiously as if he had just been taught a lesson worth more than any MBA program. Mr. Harlan cleared his throat, his voice rougher than before. You've given me more to think about than any candidate in years, he admitted reluctantly. It wasn't a concession he made lightly. In that moment, it was clear. The interview had shifted. Emma was no longer the one under evaluation, Mr. Harlan was. And though he didn't yet say it, he knew she had already passed. The tension broke when Mr. Harlan slowly rose from his chair. For a man who usually commanded the room with sharp words and a colder-than-steel presence, his next action stunned everyone. He extended his hand toward Emma. "Miss Emma," he said, his voice steady but gentler now, "I came into this room expecting to test you. Instead, you've tested me. And you've reminded me of something I'd nearly forgotten, that leadership is about people, not power." A hush fell over the room. The board members looked from him to Emma, their expressions softening. It wasn't every day they saw the famously arrogant CEO humbled. Emma blinked in surprise. She hadn't come expecting sympathy, let alone victory. She had come with nothing but honesty and the lessons her father had taught her in the quiet fields of home. Slowly, she shook his hand, her modest strength meeting his polished grip. "This company needs leaders like you," Harlan continued. "People who understand sacrifice. People who carry responsibility not for their own gain, but for others. If you're willing, I'd like you on my team." The room erupted in applause, not the polite kind, but the genuine clapping of people moved by something greater than business. Emma's eyes filled with tears, though she quickly brushed them away. She wasn't proud because she had outsmarted him, she was grateful that her father's lessons had found a place in this towering world of glass and steel. As the applause settled, Harlan looked around at his executives. "Let this be a reminder," he said firmly, "that the best leaders may not come from the top. Sometimes, they rise from the soil, carrying with them the roots of compassion." And in that moment, hope filled the room.